So first thing, I'm old. I need reading glasses sometimes. And to show you how old, we will see that in a minute. I'm also not used to use a microphone. I'm a guitar player, not a singer. But yeah, it sounds a lot more fancy than it really is. I'm not a pen tester. I have a security background, but only as a hobby. Only started working on this professionally about 3 years ago in the automotive industry. I do have a background completely in the automotive, but in development mostly. I work in automotive for about 20 years, 25 years actually now, but not in security. I've been working on a lot of projects on the side, security-wise. In automotive, I've so far been mostly working for defining processes and so on. Sounds scary, and it is, and it was too boring for me after some time. And about 3 years ago, I had the chance to switch professions to go into security. And now I'm mostly doing, I kind of went to the dark side. I'm trying to keep you guys out. You know, I'm trying to at least make the OEMs and suppliers listen to me to keep you guys out of their cars. Today I found this picture on my LinkedIn feed, and this is really what reflects my career best. This is the successor of the computer I started with. You see bytes free, not kilo, not mega, not anything else. I'm slightly ashamed that I didn't hear about Scapy at all till about 2 months ago in front of this conference. Maybe because I kind of don't like Python, because I'm really focused on saving every byte like from history. If I implement something, it's in Rust these days. All right, what I want to do today, because I'm not a pen tester, is give some inspiration. I'm also old. I have a kid. The kid really takes a lot of my time, and I want to really save time wherever possible. I do appreciate the hard work people do with 250 hours of trying to get to a SecOC key, but to be honest, very often the key is not something you really need, and we will talk about that in a minute. What I will show is some examples, only examples, and some inspirations for things you can do with a lot less effort and still make your point. It's maybe not that interesting, but if you don't want to spend the long nights anymore, it's for you. One thing that also, to be honest, I was quite shocked when I looked at automotive security, coming from more like of an IT and gaming background. The shape the automotive security is in is really awful. Passenger cars kind of develop these days. If you look at other areas, it's far worse, and that's also a point I want to make. What's unfortunately still an issue in automotive is encryption gone wrong, and really gone wrong. And I will show you an example, and let's see whether you can spot what I'm talking about. This is the end of an EEPROM. Can you see it? It's not that easy to detect, but it's fairly detectable, I would say. What about now? Do you see the repetition? Towards the end of an EEPROM, one thing that is fairly often the case is that it's filled up with zeros or FFs. And in this case, that was the case. And also, you can probably read the key right straight from here. This is probably the key for the encryption of the EEPROM. And in fact, it was the XORed reverse key. But that's, you still see these kinds of issues in cars that are being developed today. My guess is, yeah, there's reasons for this, but it's, I really can't express my concerns about this. Another example. This is also from a specification, and the implementation, we were successfully arguing against this implementation, but it's straight from a specification that is still valid, and I'm sure there are many ECUs that are still implementing this. Imagine you are talking to an ECU and you are trying to unlock security access level 1. And this is the response you get for the seed. What do you do? I was like, this is rather short, isn't it? And yeah, if you enumerate, if you play the role, you ask your friend that has the diagnostic tester and just forward every 16-bit seed to that tester, and it will give you all the answers for them. You put them into an Excel table or Scapy script, and then you have all the keys. In fact, some people don't quite understand that if the message is short, it in effect shortens your key, the entropy of the key. So in this case, you have 65,536 lines in your Excel table and can answer every seed the ECU throws at you. Still around these days. Yeah, of course you would script it and not put in an Excel table. Then one topic that comes up a lot and is misunderstood in my opinion a lot is authenticated or secure boot. People use the term authenticated very often when nothing is in fact authenticated, and they implement it even though it makes absolutely no sense, especially for example when you don't have an HSM. So people do this, and let's say you successfully modify the flash of an ECU, but every reset somehow you are locked out or end up in the flash loader because the authenticated boot fails. This is a very typical flow of events for a secure software update. In this case, it's rather secure, and a not so secure authenticated boot. What happens is, if you update the software, at some point you need to update the checksum for the authenticated boot. You do this down here. And if you reset, what happens very often due to boot up timing constraints is they don't check up front. They check while they are already executing the software, and next boot up, they compare the result. This is what they do here. In fact, there's a ton of ways, if you ever end up in this situation where you are locked out after 2 reboots, to work around this. You can interrupt the calculation. If you have code execution, you will find a way to do that. You can also knob out, no operation, out, or jump over the actual writing of the calculated checksum. You can overwrite the calculated checksum with the reference value. You can do all kinds of stuff to work around this feature. Still, people spend thousands of hours on implementing this. In my opinion, absolutely stupid. And in this case, by the way, we were able to persuade the OEM not to persist on this feature. Just briefly about some other neglected areas, let's say. I find that too little effort goes into penetration testing or evaluating the effects of tampering with sensor and actuator lines, because these are very often not protected at all. I didn't vote for Scapy features for SPI and I2C because I don't know whether these are implemented already, yes or no. But these would be areas that would be fairly interesting to explore more, especially SPI and I2C. External flash memory. There were 2 years at least where you couldn't easily get microcontrollers with a lot of internal flash memory and internal HSMs due to all the supply chain problems. So there's a lot of ECUs flooding, being in the cars today or shortly before release that don't have HSMs. We come back to the authenticated boot solution, or don't have internal flash memory, which means there's lines that you can sniff on to extract firmware, to maybe provide your own firmware through SPI or I2C lines on the PCB, easily accessible. Very often poorly integrated HSMs. You had the example where they calculated in RAM, and sometimes they have an HSM, they also use it, but they don't use it completely. So they would still do stuff in software and only use the HSM, for example, for storing the keys, then using the keys in RAM. Happens very often. 3 things I really don't understand coming from the IT world. I'm not sure how many of you remember the session hijacks on Facebook, on Outlook, and so on that were a thing in around about 2010. You could easily go to an airport, be on the Wi-Fi, and then sniff on people's Facebook sessions. There was no HTTPS back then. I mean, there was HTTPS, but people didn't use it. And then you could take over a Facebook session. In UDS, this is still possible today. Someone unlocks the ECU for you, and you jump on it and use the services. That's still possible. You just need to have an ECU on the car. That's it. So feel free to make use of this, because I'm really like discussing a lot with my customers, and they don't do anything about it because they say nothing is happening, you know. So please misuse these features. XCP. I was surprised to hear about XCP today. I discussed a lot with customers on whether to leave the XCP in the final binary, yes or no. I would really like to have the permission to give them your workflow because they don't quite understand how easy it is to spot XCP functionality in a binary and then misuse it. Basically, it gives you full memory access, and that's really, really bad. There's always the argument, I don't know whether that concerns you at all or not. It concerns me a lot. They make the argument the final binary needs to be the exact same that you have in development, but I don't agree in this case. XCP should really be compiled out completely. And then I was also surprised to hear that secure onboard communication is fairly new. It's not really new. It's just not used. And that's also a very bad issue in my opinion, because the GPAC has been around for almost 10 years now. And there were multiple parts to it, but the important part is that a arbitrary system could send out messages in the name of another. And I don't quite get why this is still around, but you can still do this. In passenger cars, this is getting better, but in other commercial vehicles, for example, this is still a huge problem. We have seen the SecOC definition and how key exchange and so on works and freshness value. In fact, there's lots of very, very different implementations of, for example, freshness value. Some are much better than the definition in the AUTOSAR standard, in my opinion. Also, key negotiation. You can use the SHE protocol. It is kind of limited though, because then you only have a certain number of keys. And what they do is they split up all the CAN IDs they want to secure into different key groups. And then they use one key per group. But we are talking 5, 10 maybe key groups. A better approach, which I think most of the European manufacturers take today, is they have keys that are different per CAN ID. So how do they do that? They share a secret during production of the vehicle, during assembly, and then every ECU that is involved in a certain CAN ID communication calculates so you could call it session key for that ID. And so the only critical process is the key distribution of that car secret. The car secret is not stored at all. Everyone uses it to calculate a session key with the CAN ID and the car secret, and then these are used, and the master secret, so to say, is forgotten, which is a good approach, I think, but they have a lot of issues with resetting this, because as soon as a new ECU comes into the car, a replacement, for example, you need to re-trigger this whole process. And there's always a way to re-trigger it, and very often it's a very badly implemented way, and you can trigger it. To the question with the replacement and whether you can still use a different car door, let's say, from another used vehicle, not so easily. You need to go to a dealer, at least, to re-trigger this procedure. But yeah, it's very often very badly implemented, and then you can do it again. One recurring topic with motorcycles especially, where it's sometimes referred to as keyless ride, You have the key, I have the right? So I don't know whether it was on purpose, but yeah, you don't need a key anymore to get the right. This is a never-ending story, and in my opinion, one of the most critical design failures in automotive history, because it's really by design that this is not really working. I would not trust it at all. There were all kinds of different attempts to get it fixed. The latest is ultra-wideband. It's also already broken, so I don't trust the keyless go function at all, and I wouldn't. The only thing that might prevent this is motion detection, but this is too power consuming to really implement in a meaningful way. So a KTM, get rid of that feature would be my advice. If you want to explore this, it's also one of the areas that are really nice to explore, because there's all kinds of attacks that you can apply to this area. When you want to learn about certain exploits and how they work, this is a real good area to start with. Denial of service, with jamming. You can replay sometimes with older models. You can exploit rolling codes, and especially, again, their reset. One of the issues with key fobs already, like the car keys where you press a button, is they can get out of sync. They have replay protection with counters, but they can get out of sync. You press the button, you are not within reach of the car, then your key goes up, car doesn't. So they are out of sync then. They have a way usually to reset this counter. And this is also a very bad attack vector, because you can do it on purpose. If you want to learn more about the specific attacks, you need to ask Falk. He has done a lot of research on this. Another area that I'm not sure is for you or not is trolling. I have a slide. I really like trolling, and there are at least two things that really invite for it, and one is self-driving cars, right? Don't do this at home, don't get caught, but I really like to explore this area. You see lots of videos where cars get stuck by themselves, but why not even help a little bit, you know, with a red light. Maybe a poster of a red light is enough. Forgive me for the pictures. It was a very quick OpenAI text prompt I gave. Detours, very nice, right? So if you put a detour sign there, I don't know how the car will react. But it's for sure a future area of much fun to be had. Of course, not very technical, but I like it. Then one area, and I voted for this protocol to be included into Scapy right away, because I think it's one of the most interesting in the near future, and probably also a long-term future, which is the J1939. I think commercial vehicles are majorly neglected. Everyone is jumping on passenger cars, hacking the latest Tesla and so on. That's all very nice. To be honest, commercial vehicles, much easier to hack, much easier to approach. They are standing around every night on all the parking spots on the motorway. And that's the beautiful thing about them. You don't need to smash a headlight to get to the CAN bus. There's a plug right there. You can just plug in. You can put a man in the middle. You can act on behalf of the trailer. You can act on behalf of the truck towards the trailer. There's all kinds of things I can imagine that can go wrong in such a setting. And more importantly, they are at least 5 years behind in development. You will find lots of trucks in the next 5 years that are currently being developed or being developed in 5 years that won't support secure onboard communication. Some of them not even securing their diagnostic sessions. So you can, pretty much do everything to them. Just do me a favor and don't blow up any hydrogen tanks. But in theory, I think you could. And why am I saying this is going to be fun in the next 5 to 10 years? There's a real big problem with, or for the industry currently. You might be familiar with vehicle-to-X communication. And when I heard first about the topic, I thought, okay, this is going to be a real big challenge for the participants to align on a common scheme for the secure communication, right? How can I trust this other party on the street that is communicating to me as a car? There's solutions for that. So there's two, I think, root certificate authorities that people go to when they want to implement vehicle-to-X communication, and that's covered. However, for truck-trailer communication, there's nothing. So I don't think this will be secured anytime soon, because if they would want to really secure this, they would need to align with all the trailer manufacturers or the truck manufacturers or set up a common root authority. You don't even know who's manufacturing trailers in 5 years from now. You need to let them in. And even more complicating the situation is every day a different configuration will go on the street. You know, with secure onboard communication in a car, you need to negotiate keys one time. That's it. Here, you need to negotiate keys every day, worst case, because your Daimler truck is running a Krone trailer today. Maybe it's running a Schmitz Cargo Bull trailer tomorrow. And then they need to negotiate keys. How this is going to be solved, I have no idea. I'm trying to make that point whenever I can. So far, no success. So all in all, I think my future is definitely secured for the next 5 to 10 years, and then I can hopefully retire. But I think even yours is pretty secure because it will take decades till they fix up their stuff. All right. Any kinds of questions you might want to ask? I have lots of insight about lots of OEMs. I can't speak for them. In fact, I very often speak against them. But I know a lot of the different ways suppliers or OEMs do stuff. So feel free to ask.
Any questions, please? Here's one. What exactly is your research on autonomous driving? So you showed us like some AI-generated pictures and spoke really general. So what do you do exactly?
What I do?
Yeah.
I'm a consultant, independent consultant, and I do consult many OEMs, but also suppliers in their cybersecurity concepts. So basically my daily work is TARAS. I like it because I can still kind of hack, you know, get some ideas what you could do to the system, but I don't need to spend the long nights. So that's kind of beautiful. And then I come up with concepts, discuss mostly in the name of suppliers for an ECU usually. The tough part is negotiating with the OEM because they very often want to save cost, don't see the point of implementing a secure boot. Why not go with an authenticated boot? And then I try to make the point for the supplier to either not do it because it doesn't make any sense or do a proper solution. That's my daily work. As a hobby, I tamper with stuff. So I can see a future where I might use a dissecto equipment to maybe get into, I don't want to say Internet of Things, but all kinds of connected devices, because I really like to do that. Music devices, lawn mowers, whatever you could think of. Because once the Cyber Resilient Act is enforced, I see a lot of work coming our way.
Thank you, Jan. One question, I think it was the 2022 in the EDIT conference, we have heard that the J1939 is also supporting the SecOC. I haven't seen any example of that, so I wanted to ask you if you have ever seen any example of that implementation.
No, and even worse, I think they will really have a hard time. I mean, defining it is easy, right? You just need to have that secret. But how do you establish that secret? That's far beyond me. I have no idea how they want to do it. In theory, you could do the same thing that they did with vehicle-to-X. They could say, okay, we have this root authority that we all trust, and they sign certificates for everyone who is manufacturing either trailers or trucks. whether this will really come. I tried to find out whether anyone is working on it. So far, everyone said no. So this is really, I don't see it coming in the next 10 years. It's also a political challenge, right? Who do you trust? I was surprised to see that they solved this for vehicle-to-X, but it's more fancy. The chip providers are in this playing field. This is why I think they came up with a solution. This is a rather like truck trailer is really old and not that fancy, and this is why I think they don't really care. But it would be important. You have no idea how many safety critical functions a trailer today has. Braking, steering, load management, and so on and so on. And by the way, the overall security shape of trucks is really bad. So if you want to make some impact, that also helps me make my point towards my customers. Get your hands on a truck, tamper with it. It's easy.
Thanks. In your career, what kind of attacks did you mostly observe in the field?
None, because it's not my job, unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, I have only had one. I have lots of experience in other industries, not so much in this one. Again, I like the position I have where I imagine all kinds of attacks I could run. Don't have to put in the hard work at night. But I did not really hack, but rebuild a complete car, but no hacking was involved in that case because the 3 ECUs it had, I took out completely, so nothing was left.
Okay, thanks.
So for the case of the truck connected to the cabin, what will be the benefit for the attacker? Because if it is just stealing the trailer, I can do that. I can cut the connection and take the trailer away. So my second question is, what are the OEMs most worried about? About losing reputation, about customer injuries, about losing money?
So first question, what's the point? In my experience, hackers do stuff mostly because it can be done and they want to show that it can be done. So this is, I'm surprised how little actually happens in the automotive industry because a lot is possible really, and especially in commercial vehicles. I'm really surprised. Maybe they are too afraid to create some real damage that they wouldn't be comfortable with, which I see the point. What's the benefit? Good question. It depends. You know, if you want to harm your competitor, you switch off the cooling of the trailer. I don't know. You know, there's multiple cases. You can influence the truck the same way you can influence your car. I have a case currently where the whole truck doesn't have secure onboard communication, so you could steer it, you could accelerate, brake, whatever you want. What's the use case? I see lots of malicious use cases that personally I wouldn't approve, but still I would be worried about it. What are they worried about most? I would say money, reputation, some of them. I had an interesting discussion with an OEM representative about 3 months ago, where he said, why do we even do all this? Because if you look at it, and he made the example of functional safety, where some manufacturers don't pay much attention to the area of functional safety at all, process-wise. It's also not regulated, it's only a standard. And security the same. Many manufacturers don't really care that much, and nothing really happens, right? Do we care as a society? I don't know. I personally have a Chinese car. I'm happy with it. Does anything happen so far? No. Do we need to put in the effort our rather bureaucratic OEMs here in Germany put in? I'm not convinced, really.
Maybe for the truck case, I would like to give another example that I found really interesting in the sense of truck hacking. What is currently going on and what we see a lot in the field is, for example, tampering with the AdBlue system. So in this case, the attacker is like the truck owner, basically, adding custom devices to turn off the AdBlue injection once they're running over like 20 kilometers per hour. So to save AdBlue. So it's a cost saver for the car owners. This is also a form of car hacking, which is also think about it a very special threat that only vehicles have, that the owner often is also the attacker. For example, chip tuning or this third-party devices where they tamper with environmental necessary functions, for example, to save money at the end of the day, or to get more power out of the engine, which is also saving money at the end of the day.
Thank you for your talk and your reference to the heavy-duty vehicles, because I also have a lot of experience with the technical side. And basically, for example, I want to take it outside of the technical by saying that I go to the vehicle and I actually see that I can basically get access to the whole front of the vehicle with no lock. I don't need to be inside the vehicle to unlock it. I just press a button from the outside, it opens, and I get access to all the canvases. This is a culture issue, not only to the heavy-duty vehicles, but also to the normal vehicles. I don't understand why, like we solved all these issues 20, 30, 40 years ago, and now we're still discussing about the basics, about why I need to tell you that I can hijack the default, like programming session, as you said. Like, do you see this changing? Because me personally, I cannot see the culture changing. We still go again and again into the same issues, into the same discussions with new technologies, with new things implementing, but we have the same discussions.
Yes, and you're right. I think it will not change until something happens. I've seen two cases where there was a rather obvious issue, not security, was something completely different. I was working for an OEM once, last millennium, and they didn't fix it until something happened, and then they fixed it. By the way, a famous, or it's not so much a case, you might be familiar with the famous egg test. So it's a rather similar case. The solution for it was in the drawer already. They didn't want to put it in the car because of cost. Then someone did the egg test, something happened, they put it in, within a week. So this is the general attitude they have. They don't do anything until they need to because something happened. I was really surprised to see that the Jeep attack didn't really change SecOC implementation, because you would think that after that attack, where the radio basically told the brakes to stop the car, this shouldn't be happening, right? It would seem rather obvious. I came into the security field and was surprised to see that it's not been handled yet, not even in passenger cars back then. And commercial vehicles don't implement this at all. I've not seen a case where a commercial vehicle, I'm working on at least, is implementing secure onboard communication. It kind of starts, but...
Yeah, sure. And I just want to follow up that we're here 60, 70 people, that we're inside this bubble and we complain between us, I think we need to complain a bit more to the other conferences. I don't want to refer to them, but just...
Yeah, if you want to get inspiration on what could be done with a truck and a fun trailer, for example, where you have like this little toy trailer that then steers the truck and so on, you can talk about it. Because I would think that these kind of, over-the-top examples would maybe change at least some minds. I would hope so.
Maybe just one additional comment on that is also, I think it's about the nature of the business, especially when you're looking at the truck business. Then I have the feeling that the tier ones are the ones who are deciding, and the OEMs are kind of positioned under the tier ones. So especially if you are not really paying for a custom ECU, where as an OEM you have much less to say, and most of the time I see that in my current examples or in past examples that although maybe OEM is aware of some of the certain stuff about the security, they do not have the power to implement it in that way because of the total amount of numbers that they will be ordering at the end of the year or at the end of the complete project. I think when we are looking at the PK about the passenger cars and also the other ones, it's a little bit more complicated topic, not only about the awareness, not only about the security, but also finance and the overall numbers of the produced vehicles and the needed components. We just need to look at it from the bigger perspective, maybe.
Yeah, I agree. I have also seen smaller OEMs, they have real difficulties sourcing parts that would fulfill their needs. Inverters are really tough to get by for a reasonable price for small fleets with secure onboard communication, for example.
Thank you very much for the talk.